Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
Raider star Maxx Crosby could be leaving Las Vegas, and soon. Also, Iowa State traveled to face number 2 Arizona in the desert. And the Denver Nuggets are experiencing the most disappointing season of the Nikola Jokic era. I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The Las Vegas Raiders are courting teams for a potential Maxx Crosby trade, and some around the league believe it could go down soon. Locked On NFL host Tyler Rowland discusses potential trade destinations for Crosby and what it could mean for the Raiders.
Honestly, in the aggregate, it kind of confuses me, but we got to start with the big news that Maxx Crosby might be on the move again sooner rather than later, and he may not be the only big star that gets traded this week as well, with A.J. Brown bubbling in the background. Before we dive in, I do want to thank you for making the Locked On NFL your first listen. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn your energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com to get started. Lauren, all of the news is pointing to Maxx Crosby potentially being traded again sooner rather than later. And with free agency set to kick off a week from Monday, it would make sense for teams to get this deal done soon so they understand their roster composition, how much, draft capital they have. We heard from my guy Q Myers on Locked On Raiders about where things stand with Maxx Crosby here recently.
Yeah, it's not solidified that Maxx will be with the Raiders in 2026. It's also not solidified that he won't be with the Raiders in 2026. I think this is still a Maxx Crosby and Raiders decision. I think at some stage of the game, they're all going to sit down and decide if the timelines, as we talked about quite a bit here on the show, match up. And if they do, all is good. If not, well, then they have to make other decisions. And also, I know that there's plenty of teams that have reached out to the Raiders to ask about Maxx Crosby.
And if there's a market like that, then it would make sense that they would find a way. We've heard Cowboys, Bears, Ravens, Bills, Patriots, Eagles, Rams. Out of all of those teams, who do you think would be the best fit for Maxx Crosby?
I mean, I think purely from like a scheme standpoint, what they want to ask him to do, Chicago does seem like it would be a great spot. Now, I don't think they're going to be the team that steps up and delivers because they're in they have some financial challenges themselves, and I don't think they want to go all in just yet on this year. But like a lot of those other teams you talked about, like they're going to ask Maxx Crosby to play more of a stand-up edge rusher spot in terms of, Baltimore or Buffalo or even New England or Philadelphia, right? Whereas I guess Dallas or the Rams would put his hand in the dirt and let him be more of that true, like get up the field type of pass rusher. But I think in terms of like where there's a nice need and a scheme that I think could utilize him in a lot of the ways that are most effective for his skill set, it does feel like Chicago would be a sweet spot there, but again, I don't think it's super likely to happen.
I was going to take it if you weren't going to take it. I think the Bears make a ton of sense. I'm going to keep pounding the table for that. I know that the Bears may be hesitant to make that kind of move, but let's say the Bears are able to make some moves here. I know you've been talking about a Javon Dexter getting traded, a DJ Moore getting traded. If they're able to what about DJ Moore as part of a Maxx Crosby trade? The Raiders have a need at wide receiver. They could absorb that. That would make a trade a little bit more feasible for both sides. I think that makes sense. But honestly, outside of that, I look at the Cowboys and they might be willing to go ahead and do that. You add Quinnen Williams last year in the trade. You use some of the assets that you still have. I mean, they still have 2 first-round picks this year. Maybe they trade, they have 20, I think, along with 12, something like that. You trade one of those picks. It could make a ton of sense for them to turn Micah Parsons into 2-star defensive linemen with Quinnen Williams and Maxx Crosby. And honestly, if you would say, hey, can you trade Micah Parsons for Maxx Crosby and Quinnen Williams, I think I might sign up to do that if I'm having a contract situation and Micah Parsons and the relationship is deteriorated. I think the Cowboys would make a ton of sense.
I do wonder, if you're Micah Parsons, would you rather go to Dallas than stay in Las Vegas? I mean, not to say that the Cowboys
Maxx Crosby.
Sorry, what did I say?
Micah Parsons.
Okay.
I understand what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah, like if you're Maxx Crosby, would you rather? I mean, certainly Dallas is the better football team, but if you already kind of still have a heart in Las Vegas, is Dallas getting you exponentially closer to success? Or like, are they ready to try and compete for a Super Bowl type of team in 2026? Or do you say, well, I would rather try and build this out with the Raiders where I'm already a little bit more comfortable? Like, certainly I think that type of running mate on the interior would be a lot of fun for him to play with, but it's a new scheme and a little bit of a whole new defensive staff there in Dallas that you wonder what kind of stability will there be for Schottenheimer moving forward? Or are they, another disappointing a year away from changing that staff over, and all of a sudden there's a lot of turmoil in Dallas, just like what he's been dealing with the Raiders?
I think that that's a valid question, but I got to be honest with you. I think I would do that. I like Dallas. I think that if Dallas is able to just stay healthy, they have the talent to really make a deep run. They have a talent to be a playoff team. Right now, I mean, we're early in the process, and I reserve my right to change things, but right now, I would pick Dallas to win that division. I think they have something going there, and maybe they include George Pickens. We talk about DJ Moore. Maybe they included George Pickens in this trade. They already have CeeDee Lamb. I don't think that would be the right move, but it's a possibility. If you can get Crosby without giving up George Pickens, you bring George Pickens back, that's a loaded roster. If they add some talent in the secondary, I think I would be very high on that move, but
stay up to date all year on the Las Vegas Raiders by subscribing to Locked On Raiders and Locked On NFL on YouTube or your favorite podcast app. Your Locked On Sports today. Coming up, Arizona squared off with Iowa State. Before we get to that, the Lions have traded David Montgomery for some picks, I guess, something. Ever wanted to experience the NBA Finals live and in person? FanDuel is giving you the chance to turn that dream into a reality with their NBA sweepstakes. Here's how it works. Use your profit boost on any NBA future and you'll automatically be entered for a shot to win an NBA Finals trip for two. That's right, flights, tickets, the whole experience. If you're already looking at the board and thinking about which team can make a deep run, this is the perfect time to lock it in. Not only can your pick cash, but it could also send you to the finals. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Use your profit boost on an NBA future and get entered for your chance to win a trip to the NBA Finals. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who needs an offensive line? You know what I mean? The Houston Texans clearly don't think they do after trading Juice Scruggs and Titus Howard to the Lions and Browns.
Big news, Houston Texan fans. The Texans decided to trade Titus Howard for a 5th-round pick to the Cleveland Browns. I'm John Hickman of the Locked On Texans podcast, your team every day. I got the news heading to drop off my child to the daycare. Let me tell you this, man. I'm not really surprised. 2 years ago, I talked about this, how for the Houston Texans to get to the next level, some very tough decisions were going to have to be made. Titus Howard was one of those decisions where it felt like he played his role for Houston for a very long time. He was here before Nick Caserio, a very versatile piece, left guard, left tackle, right guard, everywhere but center. But it felt like for Houston to reach the identity that they really want on the offensive line, they had to move on, right? You combine that with Titus Howard wanted an extension. This situation is extremely similar to last year with Laramie Tunsil, where it feels like, do you think they elevate the offensive line play with their, how can I put this, with them being around? So I think for Houston, I think in more ways, they did Titus Howard a favor. Hey, Titus, you're going to go to a place where they have no starting offensive line. You'll be the guy. You'll also get your 3-year extension, and you'll have a fresh start to possibly prove who you are as a player. So kudos to Titus Howard. Houston getting a 5th-round pick. To me, that screams they love some players in the back end of this draft that they're going to want to make Houston Texans, or they're loading up on picks to maybe move around the board. Make sure you watch the Locked On Texans podcast all throughout this week.
Over in the NBA, Giannis returned for the Bucks, but it did not matter even a little bit against the Celtics.
Boston Celtics blow out the Milwaukee Bucks, and it's all about Hugo Gonzalez. I'm John Corrales from the Locked On Celtics podcast. Hugo gets his 3rd career start, and the rookie drops 18 points and 16 rebounds, both career highs. I am so high on this kid. I think he's going to be a huge part of Boston's future, and he showed a lot of why. He just has great instincts on both ends of the floor. He blocked 2 shots, had 3 steals, so he did it on both ends. It was an incredible performance. I'll be gushing a lot about it on the Locked On Celtics podcast, but the energy that he brought, contagious. The Celtics, no Jaylen Brown, no Neemias Queta on the back-to-back and 5th game in 7 nights, and they still brought an incredible amount of energy. Baylor Shireman, Sam Hauser, Derek White, Everybody that went out there and played. Luka Garza was a beast, 7 offensive rebounds. They just came in and played really, really hard on a night where you wouldn't expect that. And Peyton Pritchard led the scoring. You had 6 Celtics in double figures. Pritchard had a couple of really rough shooting nights, scoring nights. Coming off a scoreless night, he put up 25. So Celtics just continue to impress. Anytime there's an excuse that you think the Celtics might take, they just impressively refuse to take that excuse. I'll be talking about it all on the Locked On Celtics podcast.
Amen Thompson was brilliant in a Rockets win over the Wiz.
Kevin Durant and Alperen Sengun combined for 62 points, and Reed Shepherd flirts with a triple-double in the Rockets' 123-118 win against the Wizards. What's up? This is Jackson Gatlin, host of Locked On Rockets. And first things first, the final score does not do this game justice. The Rockets were up 123-110 with like 70 seconds to go, and Washington ripped off like 8 very quick points at the end. It was not a real comeback. It wasn't a close game. Sorry, Wizards fans. The important takeaway for the Rockets from this one, though, is the continued emergence of Reed Shepherd, flirting with a triple-double in this one, 19.7 rebounds, 10 assists, 6 steals, a career high in assists and steals in this game for Reed Shepherd. And most importantly, just how much better everybody else on the floor looks with Reed Shepherd in the starting lineup, how much more comfortable Alperen Sengun looks out there, the blossoming 2-man game between those two guys, Reed Shepherd as the table setter for this group, a skill set that the Rockets have been sorely missing all season long without Fred VanVleet. Reed Shepherd needs to stay in the Rockets starting lineup. The one bummer from this game, Amen Thompson leaving early with what looked like a tweaked ankle. Hopefully nothing serious for him, but this is something that hopefully the Rockets and Reed Shepherd can continue to build on.
Arizona came into last night's game against Iowa State ripping hot. Meanwhile, the Cyclones were in need of a pick-me-up after losing at home to Texas Tech. Locked On Wildcats host Leif Thulin reacted to Zona's top 10 showdown with the Cyclones.
Arizona able to defend at every juncture with multiple bodies. Like, you look at this team and you watch them play Iowa State and you think, okay, the guys to take away are Milan Momcilovic. And then you look at the box score, and Milan Momcilovic, the best shooter in the country, ended up shooting the ball 8 times and scoring 5 points. This is a guy who scores 17 per game and shoots 51% from 3 and is uber prolific. Then a guy who very well could be the Big 12 Player of the Year due to JT Toppin's injury, Joshua Jefferson, scores 12 points on 2 of 17 shooting. And he scores 8 of his 12 points from the free throw line. Had 4 turnovers. Koa Pete guarded him, and you saw Karchenkov and Bradley assume most of the responsibility of guarding Milan Momcilovic. Those were big keys to the game. We talked about that in the prior episode. I'll get to that in a moment. I'll give my takeaways now, but those are too big to not mention. But the defense stands out. Arizona wins by 16. And you hold a team in Iowa State that scores over 80 per game, and they shoot a ton of threes, and they've got a decent bit of variance because of that. You hold them to 57 points. And the other part of this is, I wouldn't say Arizona played overly well offensively against a very good defensive team, number 8 in the nation. And Arizona finished 46% from the field. Like, they're pretty undeniable in the sense that they'll end up near 50% or better from the field. And this took a poor Karchenkov game, 0 baskets. Pete missed a couple bunnies, 2 of 6. Bradley shot 40%, but he was very good, but most of his offense came from the free throw line. But the point is, they come in waves, and when they're whole, speaking of Arizona, they've overwhelmed teams with physicality down low. And Krivos was great in this one. He handled double teams well, but Tobe is allowed to be what Tobe is great at, and that's being a hammer, a guy who comes with energy, and you just cannot contain him. When he's playing 35 minutes, some of his energy and his physicality ends up being difficult to play that way the whole time. And by the way, we got a comment. I was about to bring this up moments ago. It says, I want a Big 12 champ shirt. Well, I'll get one. I made a promise, and I don't know if that was about me or if you actually want one, but I made a promise when Arizona wins the Big 12, and I said when. I didn't say if back then. I said when Arizona wins the Big 12, I'll get a Big 12 champ shirt, so I will do so. I also made the promise of Final Four national champs, Big 12 tournament champs, all the above. So I will honor that. I've got the hat on right here, champs for another one. Another takeaway I have, and I'm going to go through my notes on this before getting distracted because I'm sure I'll talk about other questions and bring things up. So my first takeaway was this is an extremely physical game, but the defense of Koa Pete on Jefferson and just the athletic ability to wall up against a guy who's a mismatch 4, and there's no mismatches for Arizona, and the ability to funnel into Mo Krivas, who makes every shot near the basket difficult, is important. And then they took Momcilovic out of the game. Though Ivan Karchenkov had a tough game. He was a dare shooter early. The doubles of Iowa State were leaving him as the rotational guy to shoot the ball, and he missed. A couple in and outs, a couple tantalizing misses. He took Momcilovic out of the game along with Bradley. And the top blocking defense made the game very, very difficult for Iowa State because they're a dynamic scorer. The guy who really busts open a defense, it was not able to play. Like Momcilovic was out of the equation. It was 4-on-4. And I don't know how many of you guys listened to a show I did just an hour. I think I posted it like 6:05 and the game was at 7. So I don't expect tons of you guys listen to this. But I talked about because I expect Momcilovic not to get many shots, that Jamarian Bateman would have to be fantastic to have a chance for Iowa State. I wish I had thought of that sooner, but I was just ruminating about the game. And I thought, okay, Jamarian Bateman's really solid. And I think there's going to be less Killian Toure, despite being great defensively, because Iowa State will struggle to score unless one of Lipsy or Jefferson has 30, and they won't.
Stay up to date all year on the Arizona Wildcats with the Locked On Wildcats podcast. Subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Coming up, the Nuggets have been pretty underwhelming for a while now. It has been an avalanche in Denver. If it hasn't been one thing, it's been another for the Nuggets. Can they find their groove for the playoffs, though? Locked On NBA host Matt Moore and Hayes believe that while this has been the most disappointing season of the Nikola Jokic era, they are still legitimate contenders.
It's just one thing after another. That's where Nuggets fans are kind of at, where it's like, it feels like it's the recurring theme for everybody outside the top 2 in the top 6. Like the Wolves are going through their bi-monthly, hey, this could be our year, which is immediately followed by it's so over. Like it's just a cycle with the Wolves. We're back. It's over constantly and constantly and constantly. But the Lakers, the Rockets, and the Nuggets are all in the cycle where it just feels like it's not their year, where Denver's defense was horrific in December, and then the injuries were catastrophic in January. And in February, it was like a culmination of everything. In the first 2 weeks of the February, it was the defense that was horrendous, and Jokic couldn't hit a shot. Now Jokic is back to being awesome, and the defense has actually been good, but nobody else can shoot. It's just like one thing after another that constantly kind of has beset this team in terms of what has gone on, what has happened, the injuries, not just the injuries, but the timing of it. And I talk about this a lot. Everyone acts like injuries or whatever. It's about when they happen. Do you have cluster injuries at a position that leaves your either rebounding defense or ball handling compromised? Or do you have them kind of spread out? Does it happen in a stretch where you are facing lottery teams and so it doesn't really matter, you're just better than them? Or are you facing some of the best teams in the league? The mix and match of when these injuries happen, I think, is a lot of it. But the Nuggets overall, I think, have left everyone really frustrated with what was supposed to be this is maybe the most disappointing season of the entire Jokic era, which is saying something given some of the stuff that's gone on.
Funny, the most disappointing season in the era of Jokic would be one of our best seasons that we've had in the decade. So There you go. Perspective is great on that, because I'd love to have a team right now 13 games above 500. But
I try that. They don't want to hear that. Hey, it turns out that when you have one of the best players, when you have the best player in franchise history, they do not want to hear like, oh, but you're still really good. They do not want to hear that.
Oh, and don't get me wrong. I know I was like 4 years old during the Jordan era, but I'm sure somebody would have been like, hey, chill, we're 10 games above 500. People would have said, what are we doing here? But listen, the Nuggets, I still look at it. Maybe I'm just drinking the Kool-Aid. I still look at it as mainly injuries for them. If they're a healthy come playoff team, I don't care where they're seated. I don't care about any of that. They can beat almost any team that's in front of them if they're fully healthy. So I think health is still one of the biggest factors for the Denver Nuggets. Yeah, there's some other micro things we can talk about, but I don't think we've seen a long enough stretch from this team being 100% healthy to where I'd really worry about it yet. Even at the beginning of the season when they were, like, you were still incorporating, like Cam Johnson's season started off terribly. So, you can't really take everything from that either.
I want to get to the Cam Johnson point here in a second, but Hayes, are they maybe being a little too hard on themselves there in Denver potentially? Because I watched that Thunder game. The Thunder are the favorites in the league. They go to overtime with that team. That's the Nuggets. I'm watching that game. It's super physical. That to me felt like a team that could still go toe to toe with the defending champs. I came away, despite the loss from Denver, a little kind of impressed by them, Hayes.
Yeah, me too. I like that. Like the thing is that as long this team is really talented, and they're always going to have those games that you look at and you're like, okay, well, maybe it's not as bad as we think. And that was what that game was for me. Like I said, I don't get too far down on the Denver Nuggets. I always look at them and maybe it'll come back to bite me. But if they're healthy in the playoffs, they'll be fine. Even if they're 90% healthy in the playoffs, they'll be fine.
Expectations are the thief of joy. And, from a Nuggets perspective, it's like, yeah, you played them all the way to the end. And Cam Johnson misses the corner three wide open.
Yeah, that was tough luck.
And then they lose in overtime when Shea doesn't play.
Yeah.
And it's just like, yeah, hey, you hung in there. But the expectation from Nuggets fans, and this is a lot, like I'm writing about this right now for one of my Substacks, is the problem is, and this really is it, when you have a player like Jokic, the expectation is not be pretty good. It is not make playoff runs. Like they've lost once since 2019. They have lost once in the first round, which like the first round is the definition of, yeah, you were good, but you were a fraud. And then like the conference finals, well, to be honest, now it's like every round is like, unless you win the finals, you're a fraud. And honestly, should be more of these finals teams are frauds, like I've mentioned before. But anyway, like a consistent top four finish should be really good. The Nuggets are in contention every single year, but with Jokic and the idea of 3 MVPs, all like his performance as best player in the world title for multiple seasons, you should have more. Yep. And I just don't know if that's really doable in today's NBA compared to where some of the other guys in history were. Kevin Garnett, 1 MVP, 1 title. Moses Malone, 3 MVPs, 1 title. Tim Duncan, 2 MVPs, 4 titles, but he was only the best player on 2 of them. It's just a lot of it, I think, is the expectations of the thief of joy.
And finally, the gloves are off in Oxford, Ohio. Miami, Ohio athletic director David Saylor blasted Bruce Pearl on social media after the TNT analyst said the undefeated Redhawks wouldn't survive a Power 4 schedule and don't deserve an NCAA tournament bid without winning the MAC. Saylor called the comments flat out wrong and accused Pearl of disrespect, even suggesting he shouldn't be near a TV studio covering March Madness. Miami sits at a perfect 29-0, but owns a weak strength of schedule, fueling skepticism about their resume. Pearl argued the Redhawks would finish in the lower half, maybe even last in the Big East, while also acknowledging his former Auburn program is squarely on the bubble. All this back and forth drama just has us excited that March is here, undefeated mid-major darlings, power conference anxiety, and a whole lot of public lobbying before the committee even gets involved. The madness is already here. Coming up, the Chiefs are taking a hard look in the mirror this offseason. What moves can we expect Kansas City to make after an embarrassing fall from grace? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.